doing the same job for Trimet in Clackamas County. And yet we can't get all together on the same page. After 2 years, we can't even make progress to get our contract renewed. And First Transit has a habit of canceling our shifts to outsource the rides to cab companies. In fact, in June, in one day, over 80 shifts were canceled for professional drivers. Those rides were attempted to be outsourced to cab companies, but it was during the Rose Festival, and no cab rides were available, and thousands of people with disabilities were unable to make their trips that day.
Yeah, that's a pretty bad. That's bad.
As has already been mentioned, there is a better way. Across the river in Vancouver, I encourage you to talk to them. They use the exact same software that First Transit has and fixes lots of these problems with the software. When we bring these issues up to First Transit, they say it can't be done, when it's literally a checkbox on the software that both agencies are using. There's pay parity across the river. Paratransit drivers are paid nearly the same. They're getting closer and almost there as fixed route drivers because they value those riders the same as fixed route drivers.
You gonna wrap up soon?
So,
yeah, see, there he goes. Yeah, there he goes, man. There he goes. You won't let him. He's cutting him off. That's disrespectful, and it tells you where they're at, okay? He's making valid points. He deserves to be able to talk. But here goes Warner.
I mean, just the tone.
Yeah.
You got
yeah.
wrap it up.
Right. He's like being, what are you gonna ramp it up? You know, just awful, man. Just awful.
I mean, the mayor of Beaverton went on for 12 minutes, but it was just throwing out accolades.
Right.
So
So I mean, so what makes me understand? This just shows you a familiar picture of what government is. You see, right in front of our face, an agency we're familiar with. You can see it on our level of what government's actually doing to people and how it has no real interest in the people, none at all.
There's a lot more in this report, and I invite you to read it, give you a chance to read it, and we look forward to following up with all of you individually to see how we can continue to move this issue forward.
Thank you. We look forward to reading it.
I thought that was a good presentation. You didn't like that? I thought Jared's pretty articulate. I mean,
he's articulate. I must commend him that he is extremely patient. And I mean, at 2.5 years, he's extending his hand. I mean, I'll tell you, I'd get a cramp waiting for that handshake.
Yeah, well, he's, when he was with Opal at the time, I think Opal's becoming more institutionalized now too, but at the time he was over there, they were pretty unaligned to institutional structure. But the ATU is aligned with institutional structure, and that's part of the reason why they're not effective. They're part of that institutional structure, and you can't really fight too hard against the institutional structure that you are funded by, okay? Because that's you're biting off the hand that feeds you, more or less, which is why ATU is powerless right now in many ways, because they're too aligned with the structure, and they're all institutional. They're institutionally compromised.
Hi, I'm Esmeralda Flores, and I am with Centro Cultural de Washington County out in Cornelius, and I also sit on the HB 2017 board. And I came here today to share about the transit dependency in Washington County for the folks that have not been spoken about today. Last week, we had a collaboration with the city of Hillsborough in a conversation about transportation and roads and sidewalks and conversations like that. But transportation ended up being the hot topic there. And it was very well attended by the Latinx folks, which is not always the case out here in Washington County. And one of the stories I heard actually were how I heard a story about how this woman helps some supports field workers that work out in the fields in providing transportation rides to them, because they walk all the way from Hillsborough all the way to the fields to work. So let's not forget about the folks that are not being spoken about. I know that transit dependency is much more than commuting to work. It means going to the grocery stores. It means going to the doctors, going to family gatherings. It means overall being reliable on transportation. And when transportation doesn't provide enough coverage and frequency for folks that are living in the rural communities of Washington County, Trimet has to ask themselves, are we providing an equitable coverage and resource and frequency to folks out here in Washington County? We have a very different region out here.
The answer is no. Most of the Trimet services are oriented to downtown Portland and Portland proper. I mean, they get the huge bulk of the finances go to Portland, and the outside areas are pretty much ignored.
Here, rural community, also here in Beaverton, it's urbanized. So I do want to also share the fact that I can also speak on the transit dependency. Growing up, I actually was transit dependent with my family. So it was very important to have the buses and the MAX rail being very frequent. If not, we would miss our appointments, as well as I'm very glad that the low income fare is actually going to happen, because I remember growing up that my mom had to choose between buying milk or our bus ticket. So like I said before, I think that it's very important, yes, that we think of folks that are commuting to work, but think about the folks that are needing to commute in other jobs that people don't usually think about, or the communities, which are the marginalized communities that folks don't usually think about out in Washington County. And I know that Washington County is continuously growing. And with the new side of Hillsborough, I think that a lot of marginalized communities are going to be displaced and pushed out more towards the rural Washington County. So think of the coverage, the frequency, and new bus lines that need to be added for folks that are going to be displaced as well as already displaced.
Yeah, this HB 217, 2017 is going to be interesting to see what happens with this, because they're not documenting any. There's no such thing as a HB 217 transparency center. Like Trimet has a transparency center. You can go over there and you can look at various reports, and that's one of the reasons we're able to watch this meeting, is because it's part of that. The HB 217 doesn't have any of that, and that's $3 billion they're handing out there.
Yeah, and she's on the quote that, what is it, 1524 member advisory committee?
Right, it's huge, yeah.
Yeah, and which will turn out to be nothing more than a PR tool for
right. It'll be the same thing as Trimet. I mean, it's all set up like Trimet. It's reports to the governor. You know, my objection was they didn't let the voters vote. You know, the aristocracy is just stealing the money now. They're just taking the money without asking. They're going to start tolls. That's tax. Okay, that's taxing people. I don't care how they rationalize it. It's taxing people, and what they do with that money, they'll give it to Goldman Sachs like they always do. Okay, the money goes immediately to the bankers, and then they borrow it back, or some goddamn nonsense bullshit that keeps the neoliberal elites living like kings and queens.
And this money, which is a horrendous amount of revenue that'll be coming in forever. The only thing you can look to is the Oregon State Lottery that has gotten so much money, and over the years, every once in a while, someone says, "So where in the hell did it go?" You know?
Yeah, right. Well, it goes where it always goes. It gets stolen. Okay, that's where it always goes. You know, they don't cover this.
They lost track of tons of loans.
Yeah.
That businesses never paid back.
Yeah,
went out of business and took whatever money they had and liquidated.
Yeah, you can't really name one institution that's run well by the government. Not one. Okay, what do you think? Can you think of one? I can't. Trimet's, pretty bad. It's not awful. There's worse, but Trimet is not good.
Yeah, by the way, I have on my current Facebook post an article featuring, if you think this is unique to just Portland, Oregon, and this board, this management,
no.
There is a terrific article that I posted, which you need to see the comments of the passengers and the general public going over the same issues that you see here.
No. This is a boilerplate setup. I mean, this is set up at the highest levels and implemented at the local levels.
I mean, you could interchange that board, this board, general manager, and you would not know that anything has changed or would change.
Yeah, I'm looking at your post. I don't know, tolling, coming to Portland. This is in the fast lanes, in the minds too many. For whom does the bell toll for? For thee. Here, can you see that?
The post is the one with, it shows a picture of San Francisco.
Yeah. I have it in my, I was looking through this.
And if you tap on the little box on the secondary header, you'll see all 20 comments. And it sounds just like this testimony that we've been hearing.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Good comments.
Good comments, he says. Yeah.
We're almost at the end. We got 3 folks.
And again,
Don Odermont.
Yeah.
Not one
question, yeah. Right.
Not one question, not one change of expression from any one of these people.
Nope.
And Jim McCauley. Don Odermont is with the City of Hillsborough, and Jim McCauley is with Washington County. Oh, I guess we'll let Rick Van Beveren.
You remember Rick Van Beveren? I don't know. Were you watching the board meeting when he was the head guy? I was watching.
No.
I was watching him back then. That's yeah.
Okay.
I go all the way back to Pasador when remember Pasador? He was the head of the board. Remember that son of a bitch? Oh, he was a fucking asshole. I always kind of like Rick Van Beveren.
If I recall, watch him go over his 3 minutes.
Oh yeah, he'll go over. Yeah. No, not only will he go over, but he will be invited. He'll make a comment about that. I'm going to go over, and then Warner says, "Please." Okay, I remember it very clearly. In other words, go ahead and be over your 3 minutes because you're you.
And I'm a Hillsborough City Councilor and also chair of the...
Oh, so he's Hillsborough City Councilor now.
I'm also a former Trimet board member, and I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the service of each and every one of you, because I know you're not here because of the compensation. I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview about Hillsborough.
Yeah,
and hopefully
they're not there for the compensation. They're there to get the inside information. They're there because some of those people sitting on that board are developers.
Yeah. They're part of that neoliberal elite that I'm talking about. They're connected to it in some way.
The money might not be coming directly via a compensation package, but indirectly.
Yeah, they're influencing millions and millions and millions of contracts. These people influence that shit. Okay. Yeah, although most of it's done through the general manager, but anyway, they're on there for it's a great mark on their resume.
Transit that
and it proves they're an insider.
First, Hillsborough is a rapidly growing city. We have over 102,000 residents currently. That makes us the 5th largest city in the state. And we're expected in 2045 to be around 156,000. So it kind of gives you a sense of how fast fast things are changing in Hillsborough. We're at the heart of the high-tech industry with Intel and that whole constellation of businesses around them, as well as other high-tech companies. So we are a major manufacturing base for the entire state and employment area. We also have, as you've heard, a community north of Sunset Highway in North Hillsborough that's growing quickly and is underserved, and we've heard from folks that are representing those businesses. Hillsborough supports about 67,000 jobs, not counting the contract work that goes on there, for instance, to build the construction activity and so forth. That's about 28% of all jobs in Washington County. About 75% of the workforce comes in from outside Hillsborough. That's a huge number of people that are commuting to and from Hillsborough, mostly from places east and southeast of the city. So a lot of travel time is involved in that. The median income is $67,000, but interestingly, about 40% of our population earns less than $50,000, and that's a transit-dependent, I would say, population that we're trying to serve better.
Let me digress here.
In terms of...
Go ahead. Digress.
We got to go back to the days of Governor Urtia, and the great savior of the state during the economic financial downturn was, quote, the phrase, the Silicon Forest.
Oh, yeah.
We no longer need chainsaws, we just need silicon. and that didn't really play out as well. And what this man is not telling you is corporations like Intel and others are getting huge and have received huge tax breaks.
Yep.
To do it. And by the way, Intel is a large employer, and that is true. But did you know that most of the workforce that works at Intel does not work for Intel?
Oh, no, I didn't know that. What do you mean?
Oh, no. They have an employment agency that they, quote, hire to hire the workforce. So essentially, they are contract labor.
Oh, God. They're like First Transit of Intel or something?
Right. And then they go up. And many of these people, when they land up getting laid off or fired, go to file unemployment and find out, well, yeah, you're unemployed, but you never worked for Intel. You worked for this agency that contracted to Intel.
Jeez.
Hey, guess what?
There you go again.
So Intel saves on the workers' comp and unemployment tax that they have to fund in. Mm-hmm. And guess who gets the shaft?
Yeah. Figures. It's the same story everywhere, isn't it?
This happened at the same time that Microsoft was doing the same thing, and a federal lawsuit up there landed up and told Microsoft, if it looks like a dock, it is a dock. Those people that are working for you for the last 10 years in your buildings are working for you. And this interagency so they had, quote, contract employers, an employment agency as the go-between. Mm. And I don't know how this affected Intel and whether that still goes on, but I wouldn't be surprised it's
the same story.
It's still in place.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised either.
job growth, Hillsborough is going to grow very rapidly and expects about 115,000 jobs in that same 25-year period. So we're growing. We don't have great transit ridership as a percentage of our mode split, and we're working on that. In terms of population, 40% of Hillsborough is communities of color. It's
40,
very,
40%.
unlike, say, Portland, it's a very, very diverse community. I have a lot more here to share. And if you'll indulge me for just a moment, I'll try to get through.
He said, please. Yeah, indulge me. He goes, please.
30% of the households don't speak English, or speak English as well as another language, I should say.
30%.
And we have low-income neighborhoods.
Huge
we have some of the poorest neighborhoods in the whole region. So it's a very diverse community in terms of income as well as in terms of ethnicity.
Do you think Warder is going to say, are you going to wrap this up?
No, 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 he's not going to. He just said, go ahead and keep going.
We are committed. The takeaway here is that we are committed to making our community transit ready. 75% of our streets have sidewalks currently. The new communities that we're building, including South Hillsborough, that have 28,000 people in it eventually, is transit ready. So we are, I think the handouts that I gave will demonstrate how much time and effort and energy we have spent to understand our transit needs, to plan for future service, and to articulate that to board members. So I hope you'll take the time to review that. Thank you for your...
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good data.
Thank you. Good data. Good data, Rick.
So Jim McCauley with Washington County Government Affairs Manager. I think the counselor actually helped provide a little different metric to what I think is visual, or maybe the what some people think Washington County is about in terms of our demographics and things of that nature. Quite a bit more diversity than you may realize. We're also not dominated by the wages that are paid by Intel, by Nike, and some of the other larger businesses. There is quite a bit of diversity in terms of that wage income, which again relates to the need for some of the expanded transit service. We've had a long-standing partnership with Trimet over the years as a county. It's been excellent. It's been a terrific working relationship.
Put it on pause for a little bit? I got dinner on the table.
Oh, yeah, okay. We'll just wrap up this segment right here, okay?
Okay.
Okay, cut. All right.